Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. Okay, today I wanted to show you my book. I published this in 2003, long time ago. It was back in the day when we didn't really have the internet, and it was a case of if you did want to publish something, you had to pretty much do it all yourself. So I self-published. I created the book and then went to a printer here in Brisbane, and they helped me create my very first and one and only embroidery book. So I thought I'd take a moment to show you the book, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a PDF file of it. Technology has moved along, and now we can buy a PDF file of books and then just hit print, and you've got the patterns, instructions, and you're ready to go, which is just amazing. Back when this was created, Etsy and a lot of these aspects of the internet just didn't exist. So I decided to do a little video about my book, show you some of the examples I created back in 2003. I was doing the circuit of quilting shops and going in and sort of doing a little morning tea showcasing my embroidery, and the ladies could purchase a book if they wanted to do so. I sold a few, but not a lot, because it's sort of one of those things that unless you're on the road constantly promoting, it's very hard to sort of get a little bit of traction. I did get a feature in the Homespun magazine of the time, which was lovely, and that sort of also sold a few books. But I then pretty much had to get back to my day job. So becoming an author, a published author, was sort of just a bit of a dream back in the day. YouTube has certainly moved things along for me a little bit. So I thought it was time to share my little book with you. And of course, there'll be a link in the description so that you can access a PDF version of my book. I will probably remove the listing of the book itself, because as I was prepping to make this video, I noticed that the staples in the book are starting to rust, so which is a bit of a shame, but I don't have a lot of them left anyway, so I should probably keep them for posterity. So the PDF will be there available, but I will remove the hard copy of this book so that no one gets a book with rusty staples. 2003, so long ago. Okay, let's start at the beginning. My book is called Flowers of Plenty, Birds, Bees and Butterflies. So as you go through the images, you'll sort of get a bit of a feel for my love of flowers for a start, my love of embroidery. I grew up on a farm, so a lot of these images that I sketched for embroidery were based on my childhood growing up in the country. And I had lots of pussycats around, I had lots of birds and butterflies, and we were always working in the gardens. So I just thought I'll flip through first, then I'll show you some examples. Now, as we go in, I even had a chance of writing a little poem. I used to love writing poetry when I was a kid, and I thought, why not have a little go? So there's a little poem at the beginning, and then a bit of an introduction about my embroidery. I was called back in the day Corrine's Country Designs, so I have changed my name since then, and it's Tobeloved Treasures, which just allows me to drift anywhere I want to go with my craft, from painting to sewing to journal making, anything. So I have changed my name since then. I go through the materials you need to make the quilt, which is what this book is all about. I'll just flip to the back page, because there's a how to construct your quilt, and I have two here sitting on my lap that I will show you, plus some smaller examples. So the book pretty much leads you all the way through to this section where you can construct the quilt. There's a panel at the top of the quilt that is repeated, which is just a garden of flowers, and then there's 9 individual stitcheries that you can do. And of course, 2 of which I've made into a pillow slip and a panel here that I'll show you in a moment. So everything is listed of what you need to construct your quilt. Basic stitches that I use throughout the book are just shown here: colonial knots, running stitch, satin stitch, blanket stitch, back stitch, stem stitch, and lazy daisy. Okay, first two images, they are of a garden fence with a floral treatment welcoming you to the garden. And then within the garden you start to see mailboxes and letterboxes from the neighbours around. Wilson is written on the box. That was a bit of a nod to my late father-in-law. Around the time that I created this, he passed away and his middle name was Wilson. So I thought I'd just give him a little mention there. You don't need to stitch that on there. That's probably a personal thing, but you could quite easily put your family name on your letterbox. Okay, some more bird boxes and the picket fence, and this is an image of my mum in the garden shed potting up her plants for her garden. Okay, next page. Once again, back into the garden, the wheelbarrow, watering the plants in the garden. As you can see, it's just lots of whimsical little embroideries that you can do, and within the image itself I have a border going around showing lots of little daisy stitches. So a lot of fun. Sitting in the garden, contemplating, hard day's work, having a chat to the birds in the birdhouse. It's a real little mix of things. And then the last page, or the last panel of the 9, is a pussycat who's sitting in amongst all the flowers, and he's looking up at the bird bath where the little birds are. And of course I'm saying don't even think about it, because I'm pretty sure he's a naughty pussycat. The last page is the panel that repeats on the quilt. So if you remember, at the top of the quilt and at the bottom of the quilt was just a strip of garden. So this image here is just repeated across that panel. I'll show you an actual stitchery of it. That's it there and there. Okay, the construction of the quilt, as I mentioned before, and my favorite recipe is rustic raisin buns. So I thought I might as well, there were no rules to making my book, I've added a recipe to the back of the book. So I highly recommend it. It's from my grandmother's recipe collection, and I grew up eating these on the farm, and it's pretty much a how do I describe this? It's nearly a scone mixture with self-raising flour. You flatten it out, you put onto it, before you roll it all up and slice it, you add grated apples, some mixed fruit, coconut, brown sugar and butter and some cinnamon, and spread that over the dough, roll it up, slice it, and then place them on a baking tray, and they puff up and they're just so yummy, just beautiful. So if you're game, that's my favorite recipe. Perfect with a coffee or a cup of tea when you're stitching. And then at the last page, I just give thanks to my husband, my grandmother, and I also mention Mrs. Greer. Now, she was very influential in my life. She was my primary school teacher from grade 5, 6, and 7. And then in Australia, you then go on to high school. So I actually had her for 3 years. My class at school in my country town, there was only 3 girls in the class and about 15 boys. So as you can imagine, Mrs. Greer was another girl in our lives, and she was so creative. Every day we would do something in the way of craft, be making something, learning a new technique, from macrame to a pincushion to embroidery, and she would make those boys do it as well. So the 3 girls, we just absorbed all of that creativity. So I've made mention of 2 very creative souls, and that's Mrs. Greer, my teacher, and my grandmother, Lorna. So that's just a little note there. I do have an address here on the pattern, but that's old. That's a P.O. box that yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. So I will block that out on the pattern if you're wondering what that is when you get your PDF, because I will need to scan this. I don't have an actual electronic file of it back in the day. That didn't exist. So I will need to pull the book apart and I will scan it all to create a PDF for you. So that's my little book. What else can I tell you about that? That's probably about it. I might just show you some examples of what I've done with the stitchery. I was doing a lot of Redwork at around that time, and I haven't done the quilt in Redwork, but I've done little bits and pieces as gifts, and they were just beautiful. The stitching on the front of the cover is actually using that thread in the red, and it is highly recommended that if you do love Redwork, where the whole image is stitched in the red, I can highly recommend this being done in it. But the pieces I'm showing you now I've done in blues and chocolates and colours. So without further ado, let's show you some examples. I'll just pop the book aside. So this is one of the panels here where I've used a navy blue thread and then made this into a cushion cover. And this is sort of the remnants from a Redwork project. Now, please don't ask me the names of these fabrics. They were around in 2003, so I'm going to assume they're no longer available. They might be still out there. They may be in production. I just don't think so, or at least I know there'll be versions of them because designers tend to do that a little bit. They'll bring a print from back then forward, tweak it a little bit, and you'll get another run of it. So yeah, as I said, don't ask me what they are. Some of you may recognize them. I, for goodness sakes, do not. They're long gone. I've used them. I wish I could get them again too. So yeah, they're just beautiful. So this one is the pussycats, or the pussycat thinking naughty thoughts about the little birds in the bird bath. So that's that one. Okay, this is the next one. It's all about the pussycats also at the fence looking for trouble. Actually, I'm just having a look through the book. I don't think this image is part of the book. No, it's not. I do apologize. Once I created the book, I had a few quilt shops request small stitcheries for them to do in like a project night. So I was starting to sketch some additional designs, and this is one of them. So I do apologize. This is a one-off pattern. I will scan this as well and get this up into the Etsy store. So I do apologize. It is not part of the PDF, but you will find it in the Etsy store as well. So I'll just pull that to one side and I'll start bringing in the quilts now. There's a few little individual stitcheries that I did do, so I'll work through them and get them all scanned and up in the Etsy store as well. So let's have a look at the quilt itself. This one is a chocolate and blue quilt that I made for a Brisbane Stitches and Crafts show where one of the stores featured my book. So I just thought I'd slowly show you some ideas that you can do with your quilt. It is quite big, so I'm going to try and just slide it through the camera here. There's one of the stitcheries. As I said, there's 9 in total. So there's the garden shed. And this is the pattern that is in the back of the book. So once you've created each of the panels, I then just talk you through how you cut your strips of fabric to create your actual quilt with the garden at the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's the letterbox one. That's the one that had Wilson written here. So like I said, take that name out and pop your own family name there. You don't have to use Wilson. Okay, there's another little garden one. This is the wheelbarrow. I hope this can be seen easily enough. It's tricky when you've got a small space to film and a massive quilt. Okay, the next 3 Is that one with the little girl. There's the pussycats again. So this fabric I've stitched on is like a mustard coloured linen. It was just beautiful. And then I just matched the blues and some florals to it. There's a little bit of red in this fabric. And then the panel at the bottom is the same at the panel as the panel at the top. And you just repeat. That's the one image there. And then I've repeated it 3 times across this panel at the bottom. Okay. I did see one lady had made this quilt and she used that panel around the sides of it as well. So it looked beautiful. Now I'll pop that one away and I've got another one to show you, another way of stitching it. I'll just pull that up onto the screen here. This is a colourful version of the same book. So using coloured threads for the garden. But then what I did is the actual embroideries I did in a chocolate colour. But wherever there were flowers, I used colourful threads. So just another interpretation of the same patterns. So anything that was structural or the butterfly or the borders was chocolate. And then all of the flowers were the greens and the blues, reds and yellows. So I'll just slide through all of those. I might even zoom the camera in for a moment so you can see. I'll do it on this one because there's lots of flowers on that one. I'm wobbling around the camera here. I do apologise. So let's zoom in so you can see the chocolate and then the colourful flowers. Okay, so I'll just zoom back out. All right, and then now slide this quilt up a little bit. Oh, it's tricky showing you a big quilt. I'll pop some photos at the end of the quilt in full shot so you can have a bit of a look at the whole picture. And there's the garden shed one. Then we bring it up and we've got the wheelbarrow. Once again, just in the chocolate. It's a real dark brown, that one. I don't know the thread number. If you did decide to do something similar in one of your own patterns, it's just really dark. I find that the black was probably a little bit too harsh, so just look for a really nice deep chocolate colour. And then all your flowers nice and bright. And now we're down to the bottom of the quilt again, where you've got the flower panel repeated. Okay, so I wish I had a Redwork one to show you because it was just stunning. It was just all red fabrics and yeah, just, oh, beautiful. I'm just going to grab a pattern that will also feature in the Etsy store, and I'll do a little video on it in the coming days. But it is a Redwork one, and it was made out of the leftover fabrics from the quilt I'm referring to, but that quilt has since been given to someone. It was like a commission piece. Just give me a moment. This one here. So that just will give you an idea of what a Redwork quilt would look like if your thread was just 100% red and then surrounded by the creams and some beautiful red fabrics. Once again, I don't know what this fabric was, but oh, it was so stunning. I can highly recommend you doing a Redwork project. If you are interested, I do have a video in amongst my playlist where I've created a journal of stitchery just in Redwork. So whenever I do a piece that is in those tones, I've just got somewhere where I can slide it in. So if you did want to go down to my playlist, you can have a little look at the Redwork journal that I've created over the years. So that's a little heart pattern that I did. Once again, it was for a shop that had been selling my books and had invited me to a cup of tea, and they asked if I could do them a little project, so I just sketched up this little heart, created a little kit for the girls, and that's what they had a little play with. I'll did that, like I mentioned, a couple times. This was one I did that was a teapot. These girls had a bit of a tea connoisseur type club within their quilt shop. They drank all different types of flavors of teas. So I suggested that I create a little embroidery for the girls for this particular event that was based on their cups of tea. So this pattern, as well as the heart, I'll put up in the Etsy store as well. So if you just wanted the one pattern, they'll be available. If you wanted a copy of my book as a PDF, that will be there as well. Okay, everyone. Thanks for taking a look at my embroidery world from 2003. Gosh, so long ago. But yeah, I thought you might be interested in having a peek. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.